I welcome you to another episode by Peaky Boardgamer. My name is Xarakos, and in today's video I will teach you how to play the game Notre Dame. It is a game for, well, there's not a lot to be said about this game, for it is one of the most classic, easy to learn and easy to play family Euro games out there. The game is for 2 to 5 players, plays in an hour and a half, and is designed by, who else? Stefan Feld. Let's start. The game is played over 3 periods, A, B and C, each one consisting of 3 rounds. On each one of these 9 playing rounds and through a drafting mechanism, players will have 3 action cards at their disposal. Most of the cards involve the players placing one of their influence markers to one area on the board and then executing the corresponding action. The more cubes in the area, the more powerful the action becomes. At the end of each round, players have the opportunity to hire one of the persons using their gold and execute the person's power. Players also have to pay attention to their plague tracks to avoid losing victory points and influence markers from their boards. Players are after victory points, and at the end of the game, the player with the most victory points will be declared the winner. Place in the middle of the table the appropriate Notre Dame tile depending on the number of players. This is used in a 3 players game, this one in a 4 players game, and this tile in a 5 players game. In a 2 players game, you have to use the square tile. However, be careful and use the side that depicts the 2 players symbol. In my 3 players example, I will use the triangle. Each player then takes one of the board sections, chooses one of the colors, and gets the trusted friend, the carriage, 4 influence markers, 4 messages, and the 9 action cards of the corresponding color. Players start the game with 3 coins, and they also get a rat marker which they place in space 0 of their plague track. Players place their carriage in the central space of their board, and they also place one random message to the 4 markets of their board. The message tiles are then flipped facing upwards. The 9 action cards should be shuffled and remain in a face-down stack. Players choose one of the players at random to be the starting player, who gains this token as well. Players then attach their personal board to the Notre Dame tile in the middle of the table to form the central board of the game. Next to the board, create supplies with the victory points of the game, the rest of the coins, and the rest of the player's influence markers. Separate the person cards depending on their type. We have grey cards depicting a letter, A, B or C, corresponding to a period of the game, and we also have brown cards not depicting a letter. Shuffle each one of the stacks separately. The game is now ready to start. Each round in the game consists of 5 simple phases. The first one is lay out person cards. From the stack with the person cards, you will need to flip the top 2 brown cards, and then you also need to flip a grey card depicting a letter which corresponds to the current round's period. So for rounds 1 to 3, you will flip an A card. For rounds 4 to 6, you will flip a B card, and for rounds 7 to 9, a C card. After drawing the 3 person cards for the round, we move to the second phase, which is the choose action cards. In this phase, all players draw the top 3 cards from their decks and examine them. Players choose one of these cards to keep and pass the rest to the player to their left. Players then examine the 2 new cards received from the player to their right, choose one of them to keep, and pass the second one again to the player to their left. At this point, all players should have 3 different color cards with which they will play the next phase of the round. In the next phase, players will take 2 action turns executing cards from their hand. This is done clockwise, starting with the player with the first player token. Most of the cards require the player to add 1 influence cube from their personal supply to the corresponding section and then go on with the action. The card is discarded in a personal discard pile. Important, if the player doesn't have an influence cube to add, then they may move any other cube into that area and go on with the action, or if they don't wish to do so, the action is forfeit. After all players have taken the first action, players continue performing one more action, again starting with the first player. The player chooses one of the 2 left cards, places the second one behind the selected one, places it on top of his discard pile, and goes on performing the action. After all players have taken the second action, that's the end of this phase. With this action, players add an influence cube from their personal supply to this section and then gain 1 coin for each one of their cubes in the area and also for their trusted friends if it was there. So if I played this card now, I would add an influence cube and I would gain 3 coins. This action is similar, but instead of coins, we gain influence cube from the general supply. So if, for example, I was playing this card, I would add an influence cube here, and then I would take 1 influence cube from the general supply. Similarly, with this action you add an influence cube in this area, and then you gain 1 victory point for each cube or the trusted friend in the area. Speaking of the trusted friend, with this action we must move the trusted friend to a different area and then execute the action of the selected area. If the trusted friend was not on the board, then the player may select any one area and execute the action. With the carriage house action, the player adds an influence marker to the corresponding sector and then moves the carriage spaces equal to the player's influence in that sector, in this case 3. The carriage may only stop in spaces depicting a market. The carriage can make fewer steps if the player wishes. The blue player can move the carriage to any one of the spaces that I show you in the graphics. There can be carriages from more than 1 players in one space. If there is a message token where the carriage stops the movement, the player collects it and gains all the depicted bonuses immediately. However, a player may not collect a second message of the same color until he has a full set of all color messages. The blue player has already collected a blue message, so if the player wants to collect a message, he needs to move there. This message will grant the player 3 victory points immediately and also a step back in his plague track. Then the player keeps the message token in front of their play area. The other message bonuses are a victory point and a coin, 2 victory points and a new influence cube from the general supply, or 4 victory points. With the hotel action, the player adds an influence cube here and then gains one of the 3 depicted bonuses. Either gain an influence cube from the general supply, or a coin, or move his plague marker back 1 space. If the player has 4 or more influence cubes in that area, the player executes this bonus twice. So I could gain 1 coin and a cube, or 2 coins. When a player plays the puck, he adds an influence cube here, and then he instantly moves his plague marker back 1 space, if that is possible, of course. Also, for every 2 influence markers in that area, the player gains an additional victory point every time he gains victory points from any source. So if, for example, I had here 4 influence markers, and I played the victory point card, instead of 1 victory point, I would gain 3. With the hospital action, the player adds an influence cube in the hospital and then moves his plague marker back 1 space if possible. As we will soon see, influence markers in the hospital play an important role in phase 5 of the round. With the Notre Dame action, the player spends 1, 2 or 3 coins in order to receive 1, 3 or 6 victory points respectively. If at least 1 coin was spent, the player proceeds and adds one of his influence marker to the Notre Dame tile. If no coins were spent, no cube will be added. In the higher person phase, all players, again clockwise starting from the first player, have the opportunity to spend 1 gold to the general supply and execute the power of any 1 person card. Players may select a person that was already hired by another player. Illustrations are pretty obvious, but all cards are explained in a single page included in the box. In the next phase, players will calculate the plague value for the round and will adjust the black marker in the plague track accordingly. Players will have to move forward their plague markers spaces equal to the number of rat symbols depicted in the bottom of the person cards minus the number of influence markers they have in their hospitals. If the result is negative, as it happens now, then the plague marker moves backwards. So in our example, the marker will move 1 space backwards. The marker may never exceed number 9, it always stops there. If the player's marker reaches number 9, then that player has to lose 2 victory points and also an influence cube from the area with the most influence markers. So in our example, the player would have to remove a cube from this or this area. At the end of each round, the grey person card is removed from the game and the 2 brown person cards are placed in a discard pile. The player with the first player marker passes it to the next player clockwisely and a new round begins. At the end of each period or at the end of each third round, the following process takes place. The first step is to score the Notre Dame tile. First we need to divide the victory points depicted here to the number of influence cubes that exist on the tile, always rounding down. So in this case it will be 2 victory points per cube. Then players immediately gain that many victory points for each one of their influence cubes. So the blue player will gain 4 victory points and the red player only 2. After players gain their victory points, all influence cubes are removed from the tile and go back to the general supply. Next, players reshuffle the discard pile of brown cards to form a new stack. And finally, all players take back their action card set, reshuffle it, and create a new face-down stack in front of their play area. After the Notre Dame scoring of the 9th round, the game ends. The player with the most victory points is declared the winner. If there is a tie, the tied player with the most coins and influence marker in the personal supply wins the game. The 2 players game is set up with 4 boards. The 2 players boards set up as normal, opposite to each other, and the 2 neutral boards set up only with message tokens of 2 neutral colors. The game plays exactly the same with only one difference in the drafting of phase 2. After players draw 3 cards from their stack, they keep one of them and pass the other 2 to the other player. This is as normal. Then from the 2 new cards, players again keep one of them and pass the 3rd card back to their opponent. This means that players will play with 2 of their cards and 1 of their opponent. By doing a search, I've found an even better way to do this. You will also need the card sets of the 2 neutral colors shuffled and placed facing downwards. Players draw 3 cards, keep one of them, pass the other 2 to their opponent as normal. Then players keep one of the 2 cards and instead of returning the 3rd back to their opponent, they discard it and take the top card from the neutral deck to their right. This way, players will play in the action phase using 3 different color cards as in the normal game. When the neutral card is discarded during the action phase, it is instead removed from the game. So during the 9 rounds of the game, players will use all 9 neutral cards once. And that was the rule explanation of Notre Dame, a game that will always have its place on my shelf and on my table, of course. If you like this video and want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, and until next time, have fun and play more board games.